last 4 years. Sean Payton's final year in New Orleans, in the 3 years under Dennis Allen, and of course he was fired midway through 2024, replaced by the interim head man in Darren Rizzi. I think Kellen Moore is a bright offensive mind. I do not think the situation in the Big Easy is an ideal one. Mickey Loomis has been the GM in New Orleans for over 2 decades, and there is some kind of conversation, Scott, not at Trent Baalke levels, but kind of like, ooh, the direction of this organization moving forward in this franchise is a little bit stunted at times by Loomis, who has been there so long, in kind of holding things back, whether fair or unfair. That's part of the conversation. So you don't necessarily have the GM that has guided the ship in the way that maybe you would want it. You kind of go to his vision. And more importantly, I think for Kellen Moore than the front office executive is the quarterback position. If it is Derek Carr, it's still not like, oh, okay, Derek Carr in his prime. You're trying to get the best out of a veteran quarterback, and certainly don't have your QB answer for the many years to come. If it's not Derek Carr, it's not Spencer Rattler, it's not Jake Haener, and New Orleans is not sitting in a draft position where, at least as of right now, they can go get that face of the franchise moving forward. And frankly, in this quarterback draft class in 2025, not sure how many guys could be that for a given NFL organization. Kellen Moore, Scott, certainly has his work cut out for him. Only 36 years old, turns 37 this summer, has seen great success as an offensive play caller, and now a Super Bowl champion. But it's not like, all right, fix New Orleans quickly and turn this around. This could be a slow build in the Big Easy.
Yeah, and I'm curious, and oh, by the way, Ben, we'll throw in there that not only didn't they make the playoffs, they didn't make the playoffs as basically being odds-on favorites to make the playoffs to win that division, or at least, one of the teams that really was given a fair chance of winning. It's not like it was the Carolina Panthers the last 4 years, right? They were expected to really do well. I'm curious to see how much say does he have in who they bring in. Is it going to be the GM and the ownership, or are they going to go to Kellen Moore and say, all right, you're the quarterback guru, supposedly. Who do you suggest? Do you go with Danny Dimes, Danny Nichols? You were there in that same division for a couple of years. Well, for really his whole coaching career with Dallas and with Philadelphia, you saw him play, albeit as the offensive guy, not the defensive guy. Do you go make a run for Sam Darnold? Is Sam Darnold good enough in our division? Maybe he's not good enough in the AFC West or maybe even the NFC North, but in our division where we have a youngster down in Atlanta, we have a youngster in Carolina, you got, a pretty good Baker Mayfield, but I don't think Sam Darnold would be looked upon as like, wow, he's so overmatched as he might be in some of those other divisions. Would they make a serious run? I can't believe they would really bring back Derek Carr. I mean, because he's been part of the problem, between him and Allen. I'd be surprised if they made another run for him. I think they make a strong run for Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I think they're going to look to the veteran quarterback market when free agency gets underway in the middle of March. And it's probably not a long-term answer, Scott, initially for Kellen Moore. The Saints were just a 5-12 team this year. So injury-plagued. Chris Olave, promising young wide receiver, out for most of this year. His future slightly uncertain due to multiple head injuries. The defense, which was once stout under Dennis Allen, really wasn't this year. There's not a lot to love right now. Those building blocks in place in New Orleans. And Scott, the 5 wins for the Saints this season, the fewest for the Saints in a season in nearly 2 decades since the 2005 NFL campaign, the year before Sean Payton took the reign in 2006. It's a difficult task for Kellen Moore to reinvigorate what he is going to see as a first-time head coach. Scott, I wouldn't be surprised. More than likely, New Orleans win total entering 2025. Probably 5.5, 6.5 would be my first guess.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. In that same range, believe it or not.
Yeah, it seems like where things stand around the NFC South. We'll wonder about the other teams. But when they did acquire Derek Carr just a couple of years ago, they were a minus money favorite to win the division. Plenty more comes your way up next on Football Full Circle, all around the NFL here on FFC.
4 out of 5 scientists agree it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. And we're pretty sure that one scientist is still a virgin. He just gives that 5. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
15 measles cases, mostly in school-aged children, have been confirmed in a small county in West Texas with one of the highest rates of vaccine exemptions in the state. With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. South Plains Public Health District Director Zach Holbrook said Monday that his department was first notified in late January about the first 2 cases in Gaines County, which he said were 2 children who had seen a physician in Lubbock. Some of the cases appear to be connected to private religious schools in the district. Holbrook says an investigation is ongoing. New York government employees are barred from downloading DeepSeek's artificial intelligence application onto state devices due to security concerns. Governor Kathy Hochul made the announcement Monday. The DeepSeek chatbot known as R1 responds to user queries just like its U.S.-based counterparts, such as the popular ChatGPT. But the China-based DeepSeek has code hidden in its programming that has the built-in capability to send user data directly to the Chinese government, according to experts. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Now's the time to shop limited-time doorbuster deals during Pro Savings Days at Lowe's. Save $50 on a Little Giant King Combo 6-foot ladder. Was $199, now $149. Plus, save $100 on a DeWalt XR 20-volt Power Stack 5-amp-hour battery. Was $199, now $99. Get these can't-miss deals now before they're gone. Lowe's knows savings. Lowe's knows pros. Doorbusters valid 1/13 through 1/15. Selection varies by location while supplies last.
Progressive presents Renter's MVP's Most Valuable Possessions. Today's MVP, Tom Kelly's carbon fiber mountain bike. Because more than riding his carbon fiber mountain bike, Tom loves telling people about his carbon fiber mountain bike. Friends, family, even a local barista knows about his carbon fiber mountain bike. And that's why Tom's carbon fiber mountain bike, if you haven't heard about it, is today's MVP. Keep your most valuable possessions protected by bundling your renters and auto insurance with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
There's something you should know and always remember. SportsGrid does not increase luck. We're your unfair advantage for the latest sports gaming information. If you're looking for luck, go find a horseshoe. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
So it's the NFL offseason all around the National Football League. 32 clubs, 7 head coaching vacancies this offseason, and now the actual football being played on the field concludes with Super Bowl 59. That final job was filled. Kellen Moore, now the new head coach in New Orleans, as we expected, at the end of his season as the offensive coordinator with the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Scott, we spoke at length in the opening segment about what job Kellen Moore is undertaking in New Orleans. It is not going to be an easy one from the very start. For the offensive mind, that is Moore, having to figure out the quarterback position and what that will mean for relative team success in the Big Easy. It is also, Scott, a difficult task for Philadelphia to fill, because now for the second time in 3 years, after both of their Super Bowl appearances, they're looking to make a coordinator hire. Luckily, Vic Fangio should stick around, and of course, that dominant defensive display on Sunday in New Orleans was really the difference. But after Super Bowl 57 for Philadelphia, they lost both Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon to head coaching jobs. Steichen in Indy, Gannon in Arizona, and now Kellen Moore, just 2 years later, the head coach in New Orleans. It is part of the downside, if you want to call it that, of success, although Philadelphia will take a Lombardi trophy if they have to hire a new offensive coordinator. But the Birds are looking to do just that. There was always the wrinkle effect of a new head coach in New Orleans, and now Philadelphia having to fill an open spot in its coordinator room.
Yeah, I would think the transition, Ben, and not only Philadelphia, but think about the other, the number one team outside of Philadelphia, right, in the NFC. Detroit's got to fill 2 coordinator spots. So, but I would think if you hire within, it wouldn't be that big a deal. If you hire the wide receivers coach, I'll just say, he's got to have the same kind of philosophy, you would think, as Moore, right? Maybe you tweak it a little bit here and there, but the players are familiar, same lingo, same coaches you see. It's when you're bringing the guy from the outside, and he generally wants to put his system in, and that system is generally, a little different than the current guy. That's where it's really got to be a pain in the butt. But it's the nature of the beast. I mean, what are you going to do? You win a champion, like you said. You'll sacrifice losing a coordinator if you're going to win a Super Bowl every single year. We see Kansas City kind of adapt to that, and Philadelphia's going to have to do the same.
It's interesting, Scott. This is going to be the 4th offensive coordinator for Jalen Hurts in 4 years, despite the fact he just put together another phenomenal performance, not only leading Philadelphia to a Super Bowl championship, but of course, Super Bowl 59's MVP. And Jalen Hurts is now looked at, in my opinion, correctly, as the guy in the NFC. 6 quarterbacks currently in the NFL active who made at least 5 starts for their teams a season ago who have won a Lombardi trophy. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, now Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, somehow, some way, still Joe Flacco. Only 2 guys, though, Scott, over in the NFC, the 37-year-old in Stafford and now Jalen Hurts. So a new offensive scheme, perhaps, to learn. They tried to go in-house 2 years ago in 2023 after Steichen left for Indianapolis, promoting Brian Johnson, who was the QB's coach under Steichen, had a great relationship with Jalen Hurts on the offensive side of the ball by all accounts. Obviously did not work out all that well in 2023. So it will be critical for Philadelphia to make the correct decision, whoever that ends up being as the new OC.
Yeah, you got to rely on your front office, right? You want to get a guy that's got some imagination and his own initiative, clearly, right? But you don't want to bring in a hard ass or a guy that's going to go completely different. So, and then I know it's going to sound bad to say, but I do believe in this, Ben. I go to Jalen Hurts and say, all right, if we were going to hire someone within staff, who would you suggest? If we were going to hire someone in staff, who would you say don't hire, right? And keep it all behind closed doors and get a sense of what he likes and what he doesn't like. And kind of use that. You don't want to bring in a guy that's completely opposite of Hurts. You just don't. So you take his advice, and then, like I said, if you're going to bring in a guy from the outside, you have to make sure you're not bringing in a guy that's going to make wholesale changes, because this offense is too good, right? I mean, with whether they control the ball, and you and I could literally be the coordinators. I mean, we really can with this offense and just say, all right, whatever we did last year, let's do it again this year, because clearly it worked.
And after the game Hurts had in Super Bowl 59, after the game Hurts had in Super Bowl 57, after the performance he had in the NFC Championship game, Jalen Hurts stepping up in the most significant spots each and every time, you do want to cater the offensive scheme to what he does best and making sure everybody is on the same page. And after a sensational offseason this past year for the Birds, the acquisitions of Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio, signing Saquon Barkley, Zach Bond, an awesome draft to get guys like Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. You want to make sure you are doing the same exact things. And Howie Roseman, one of the best in the NFL at the GM spot. Scott, let's look back one final time on Super Bowl 59. We do so first from the viewership perspective.
Let me say this real quickly. How could you screw that up? Let me just add this on. You screw it up by bringing in a coordinator who says, you know what, Jalen, we don't want you to run the ball anymore. We just don't want to risk it. So that game is being thrown out of the equation. Saquon, you know what? You had a great year last year, but you know what? We were going to give Gainwell half your carries now this year because we would have saved. You can't. AJ Brown, you know what? You're good, but we're going to concentrate a little more on this side. That's how you could kind of screw it up by bringing in a guy who wants to make wholesale changes. So go ahead.
Yeah, and I think if that guy in his interview said anything even remotely close to that,
like
out the door, or at least should be very, very quick. Scott, 126 million viewers for Super Bowl 59 between the Chiefs and the Eagles that saw Kansas City's hope for a three-peat come up short, and of course a dominant performance for the second Lombardi trophy in Philadelphia franchise history. It is a new viewership record for a Super Bowl, moving past last year's number of 123.4 million between the Chiefs and the 49ers, which was the viewership record up to this point. 126 million viewers, Scott, for a game that many people said, I don't want to watch it. Second time in 3 years between the same teams. We're tired of KC. Just yet another statement. The NFL remains king.
Yeah. And, by the way, though, who put out those numbers? Fox, the broadcasting network that did the game. So, not surprised they're estimating well over 100 million people, right?
Yeah. 126 is that projected number that Fox Sports did release late last night. We'll continue to go around the NFL, all the news and notes you need, and Scott's final thoughts on the Super Bowl next.
There's smart
And there's not smart.
Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Keep it here.
And win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
Mike Tyson hits the canvas. He's in big trouble. He may not be able to recover.
1990, in a huge upset, James Buster Douglas KOs Mike Tyson in the 10th round in Tokyo, Japan. Douglas was a 42-1 underdog. It was Tyson's first loss as a pro boxer and marked the beginning of the end of Iron Mike's dominance in the ring. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
Full self-driving cars are still not reality, but most modern vehicles now offer some kind of driving assistance like lane keeping or automatic braking. New North Carolina State research tests 3 ways to get a distracted human driver to take control. Number 1, warning bells. 2, spoken instructions.
Please avoid the bridge abutment.
And number 3, a more conversational approach.
Tell me, what did you eat for lunch? By the way, that's a bus.
And the winner, conversation.
I'm not sure where we're going, but I'm sure we'll get there eventually.
Follow me, at Capalbo on X, and stay tuned to The Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Carver and Lisi.
Here's a parlay I drummed up. Calcaterra for a touchdown, Pirine for a touchdown.
You're such a pig. You're such a pig. You always have to take all these big ones and put them together, and then one of them's going to hit, and you're going to walk away with nothing.
And Saquon Barkley, 25 receiving yards. On 200, it pays $88,624.58.
You're so greedy.
It's Carver and Lisi with Mike Carver and Joe Lisi. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific, on the SportsGrid Radio Network. Wherever you go, there you are. Download the SportsGrid mobile app and we'll be right there with you.
So now you can get the winning edge
Anywhere. Even while the wife's talking to you.
if you got an earbud.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. Scott, one final look back on Super Bowl 59 from your perspective. You were a part of SportsGrid's coverage all Super Bowl Sunday long. Our final show together, of course, last Friday was a 2-hour Super Bowl special on Football Full Circle. And Scott, part of your prediction was an Eagles rout, not just winning the game outright as a small underdog or even by a touchdown, by double digits, multiple scores. That's exactly what we saw. 40-22 the final, and frankly, the final score not truly indicative of how lopsided that affair was in New Orleans. Scott, what was your lasting takeaway of what you saw on Super Bowl Sunday in the Big Easy?
Yeah, I was just amazed at how Kansas City just didn't make any adjustments or make any run at all, Ben. You said it, 2 touchdowns in the final 5 minutes. Otherwise, that thing was 40-6. I thought after the first couple of drives, okay, Andy Reid, Kansas City, known for all their adjustments and on the fly and all the imagination that they have, right? Okay, first couple of drives, struggle a little bit. Then we get into halftime, and I'm thinking, all right, they get the ball to start the second half. Maybe they put a field goal, touchdown on the board. They just never made that run. Never. Man, they had 7 drives. This is the one stat that really just, out of all the stats you can come up with on how bad Kansas City was Sunday, they had 7 first-half drives. They had 1 first down in 7 drives. Without knowing for sure, I am positive that has got to be the worst football that Patrick Mahomes maybe literally has ever played. And I'm going back to grammar school. I don't think there's ever been a series or a game where he's had 7 drives and accumulated no points and 1 first down. I'm just amazed. Like, they just never made any kind of run. I mean, was Kansas City that bad? Was Philadelphia's defense that good? We're hearing about how they really didn't blitz that often. So why weren't these guys getting open? Where was that Mahomes magic? Just, everyone else, just stunned. I mean, I did think Philadelphia was the better team, and I thought they would shut down Barkley, and I really thought Hurts would step up. So it really did kind of play in, but I didn't think this. I didn't think it was going to be 40-6. I had it like 34-17, 37-14, but I thought it would be somewhat competitive for a half or so. And then Philadelphia would take over. I'm just amazed that just Kansas City never made a run. You could have the worst team in the NFL and the best team in the NFL play in the regular season. And that worst team somewhere along the line makes a little bit of a run. It just didn't happen on Sunday. I'm amazed.
And that's kind of what we've given the Chiefs, incorrectly so, the benefit of the doubt in this historic and dynastic run. Even when not playing their best, they find a way to stay in football games. And you would think the bright minds of Andy Reid and Matt Nagy and Patrick Mahomes all coming together would be able to make those real-time in-game adjustments to be able to answer what Vic Fangio was presenting from Philly's defensive edge. He just never could, Scott. They seemed like they were the ones asking the questions all night long and out to sea at times, trying to figure out what to do offensively. It wasn't getting to the 25-yard line and getting stifled and not being able to convert a touchdown and maybe missing a field goal or a bad turnover here and there. It was nothing. And that one first down, Scott, on the very first offensive play from scrimmage in the opening half for Kansas City, an 11-yard connection to Juju Smith-Schuster, that was it. Kansas City really did look lost. And Scott, that to me was my main takeaway. We always expect the Chiefs to have that magic, and they have earned the right to have that belief in their ability. It just felt not only the complete opposite, but so far from that expectation and what we have all known about Kansas City that it was mind-boggling and leads to the result that we saw, an 18-point win that felt more like 180 or at least 80 than what we saw actually in New Orleans in the final score.
Yeah, I mean, listen, with all those drives that ended up in field goals for Philadelphia, which is going to happen, right? Not every drive is going to be destined for a touchdown, but you take away the first drive Philadelphia had where they had that bad pass interference penalty that wiped out a first down that would have given them the ball inside the Kansas City 20-yard line. I mean, it could have been a lot worse than what it was, point being.
Yeah.
That's how one-sided it was. So, I know a lot of people are calling this for the demise of Kansas City. I'm not going to go that far, Ben. They should get Rashee Rice back next year. I'm guessing maybe they'll even make some more additions. I will say this, though. The competition to get back to the Super Bowl is much more difficult in the AFC than it is the NFC for Philadelphia.
No doubt about it. Scott, we've already seen the Super Bowl odds for Super Bowl 60 next year in San Francisco posted and then change drastically. The team who is expected to win a Lombardi trophy, the odds everywhere else in the market. We're talking some big movement. We'll discuss up next, live right here on FFC.
The winning edge. You've got it. But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us. But we're working on that. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. In Monday's NBA action, Luka Doncic made his Lakers debut. He had 14 points in 24 minutes in a 132-113 win over the Jazz. The Cavaliers beat the Timberwolves 128-107, 43-10. Cleveland now tied with Oklahoma City for the league lead in wins. The Hawks beat the Magic 112-106. The Spurs over the Wizards 131-121. The Nets beat the Hornets 97-89. The Hornets aiming to dispute Mark Williams' failed Lakers physical. He was traded for Dalton Neck, Cam Reddish, and a number of draft picks, but the trade was rescinded after Williams failed the physical. The Celtics beat Miami 103-85. The Warriors over the Bucks 125-111. The Thunder beat the Pelicans 137-101. In overtime, the Kings over the Mavericks 129-128. The Nuggets beat the Blazers 146-117. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
Friday is Valentine's Day, so if you still have shopping to do, then it's time to get to Macy's, because we make finding the perfect gift so easy. How easy? We have last-minute gifts that feel truly thoughtful, like fragrance gift sets from Yves Saint Laurent, Carolina Herrera, and Marc Jacobs, boxed and ready to give. Yeah, it doesn't get much easier than that. So head to Macy's and make their Valentine's Day a little more special, and your life a little bit easier. But hurry in, because you're almost out of time. These deals start tomorrow at Macy's.
Oh, could this vintage store be any cuter?
Right? And the best part? They accept Discover.
Accept Discover? In a little place like this? I don't think so, Jennifer.
Oh, yeah, huh? Discover's accepted where I like to shop. Come on, baby, get with the times.
Right, so we shouldn't get the parachute pants?
These are making a comeback. I think.
Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
You're listening to Sports Grid.
Spreading the winning edge far and wide.
Terrestrial, internet, TV, satellite, and don't forget our mobile app.
Face it.
The winning edge is everywhere.
Somewhere there's a squirrel frustrated he can't get a phone.
This is the Sports Grid Radio Network.
You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC, the second Lombardi Trophy for the Philadelphia Eagles in franchise history in Super Bowl 59. Scott, they have made 3 Super Bowl appearances in the last 8 years for this franchise, 5 in total in franchise history, and now 2 Lombardi trophies. And the odds makers have already opened up the betting odds, of course, for Super Bowl 60 next year in Santa Clara, California. And initially, it was the Chiefs as the favorites at a plus 650 price, 50 cents in front of a group of 3 teams, the Eagles included, alongside the Ravens and the Bills, all at 7-1. But Scott, yesterday, in the 24 hours after the end of Super Bowl 59, a ton of market movement in next year's Super Bowl prices. The Eagles now the favorites at 6-1. The Chiefs and the Ravens tied for the second best price at plus 650. The Bills moved back to plus 750. The Lions still round out the top 5, but now at a 10-1 price. It was 9-1 just yesterday. It's got already a lot of movement for next NFL season in 2025.
Yeah, even Philadelphia, Ben. You know, when I was doing my podcast yesterday afternoon, we were talking about how the Eagles were the odds-on favorite at plus 650. And it's already down 50 points from that. I mean, it's amazing how these lines can move. You know, you would think, all right, these are the lines, and this will stay this way until maybe free agency hits. You know, a little bit of the draft talk kicks in and who's going to go here or there, right? But no, I mean, it's amazing. You know, 50 points is 50 points, right? 50 cents, however you're going to look at it, you know, from 650 to 6-1. It's funny. I did say that yesterday, too. Like, you know what? That's not going to go any higher. You know, unless Philadelphia opens up the season with 3 straight losses, like no matter what they do this offseason, everyone is seemingly set. You know, they're set up for a bright future. There's no major player like a Jalen Hurts contract or an A.J. Brown. Now, one of these guys could step in and say, give me more money, I'm holding out. That could always happen. But on the surface, these guys are all locked in, you know, for the next year or two. Devontae Adams entering, or Devontae
Smith.
Devontae Smith, thank you. You know, he's entering the last year of his contract. That could be a bit of an issue, but I think that's even going to go even lower, you know. And as we mentioned before we went to break, you know, the path to the Super Bowl in the AFC, as we say every single year, but it is true. I mean, there's Cincinnati, there's Baltimore, there's Buffalo, and there's Kansas City, the Chargers, the Texans. I mean, it's one team after another. Realistically, in the NFC, you know, barring surprises, you got Washington, right? You know, the Dallas, you know, are they coming or going? You know, is Minnesota going to have that same type of year? You know, I'm not counting on it. You know, Green Bay should be halfway decent. Detroit.
Yeah.
I think San Francisco's coming back to the pack, not going forward. So there's 2 or 3 teams, maybe 4, that might present a little bit of a stumbling block for Philadelphia. And I think that's why they're the odds-on favorite, outside of them obviously being champs. But I think as we get closer and closer, people are going to realize, there's only 1 or 2 teams that really could pose a problem for them, unlike, you know, Kansas City on the other side.
And Scott, as you alluded to, really the pinnacle right now of the NFC, based on proven nature, is Philadelphia. 2 Super Bowl appearances in the last 3 years and a Lombardi trophy, finally able to stand in the way of Kansas City. Now, the 49ers entered 2024 as the favorites to win the NFC and a Super Bowl, and they have appeared in 4 of the last 6 NFC championship games with 2 Super Bowl bids in that time, but never a Lombardi. It really is Philadelphia, and then everybody else down a tier, down a peg, however you want to categorize it, within the NFC. A $4 gap, as you will see from the Super Bowl 59 odds. 6-1 price now on the Birds, 10-1 number on Detroit. The Lions have a lot of questions to answer based on the changes in their coaching staff. We'll talk about the 49ers in just a moment. The Commanders were 18-1 yesterday. They're back by $6. Maybe people saying, hey, we need to see Washington and Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury prove it year over year before we truly buy into them as a Super Bowl contender. And now the Green Bay Packers at a 20-1 number as well. But Scott, when you look at the AFC, again, it is that tier of three that really emerged throughout a majority of the 2024 campaign. We expect to still be the same cast and crew in 2025. The Chiefs, the Ravens, and the Bills. Three teams separated by just $1 to be a Super Bowl contender. KC and Baltimore plus 650. Buffalo backed by $1 at plus 750. And Scott, to your point about the Chiefs before the break, yes, this era of the dynasty in Kansas City has probably come to a conclusion, right? The hope for history to be the first NFL team to ever win 3 consecutive Super Bowl championships. That part is done. The idea that Kansas City will no longer be a part of the conversation, to have something to say about the AFC and how it's decided, or in fact, who wins a Lombardi trophy, I still think Kansas City will have many more opportunities, even next year, to be right back in the same spot they have been for every season Mahomes has been the starter in KC.
Yeah, listen, you'll always have a fighting chance as long as he's there, as long as Andy Reid is there, right? So I wouldn't cast them off as, okay, they're done. I will give you 3 teams, though, Ben. You know, if you're looking for value, I hate that phrase, but if you're looking for good teams with good quarterbacks that seem to be on the up, the boys in Vegas are giving you 3 guys in the AFC. I'll start with our favorite team. In every single year, we're going to buy in, right, because of Joey Burrow. Cincinnati, 18-1. They get their wide receiver room figured out. You know, the way they played at the end of last year, everything went wrong for them at the beginning of the season. We get that, but they're still a really good football team. 18-1, not bad. Houston Texans, all right, a little bit of regression from the Cinderella season they had last year, but ultimately they still won the division. The division is still pretty weak, and I think what they did this season will only help them next year. They're 29-1. And then how about the LA Chargers at 30-1, right? I mean, second year with John Harbaugh, I think they overaccomplished what people thought might be a disastrous season, the way they lost all their wide receivers and everything, and their running backs got all hurt, and it turned out to be a halfway decent year. 30-1, 29-1, 18-1. Those are 3 pretty good football teams that should be getting better next season.
Scott, I do believe the value, as you said, is with Cincinnati. With a healthy Joe Burrow, the ceiling for this team is incredibly high. 2 consecutive AFC championships in his first 2 full seasons in the NFL. And, of course, a Super Bowl appearance mixed in there as well. Last year, fully healthy, but an atrocious defense. 18-1 the number. It was 24-1 yesterday, so many people believing in the Bengals as well. But a lot to figure out in terms of what the actual roster will look like and the paydays that are due this offseason. What happens with T. Higgins? Does Jamar Chase see that record-setting extension? What about Trey Hendrickson, Defensive Player of the Year runner-up on that side for Cincinnati? Joe Burrow has basically been a politician campaigning and boosting for his guys. We'll see if the often financially cheap owner, Mike Brown in Cincinnati, does listen to those pleas. But it will be very interesting, Scott, to look around the NFL and see where the value is, see these numbers right now, second full day of the offseason, and after we actually see changes, free agency, trades, combine, draft, all of that stuff, where these numbers start to go. You mentioned the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh and the Bolts in for a second consecutive year. Kellen Moore, former OC in LA, before the Harbaugh tenure started this season, under Brandon Staley. ESPN's Adam Schefter reporting that former Chargers head coach, who spent this past season with the 49ers, is the frontrunner to be Kellen Moore's new defensive coordinator in New Orleans. They will pair up again in a coaching room, but a change of who is the boss and the head honcho.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Let's see how that works. Little role reversal. Kind of like when we were talking about Belichick going to the Las Vegas Raiders, right? After being obviously Tom Brady's boss all those years. Would he really accept that, now being, under Tom Brady? Probably not. So, but, I have more faith, back to the AFC for a second, but I have more faith in Houston and the Chargers doing the right thing this offseason and adding on than I do, unfortunately, the Cincinnati Bengals, even though I actually give the Bengals the better shot just because of Joey B, but chances are they'll screw it up.
Scott, if you told me that Jamar Chase was happy with his money and even Trey Hendrickson was happy, even if they lose T. Higgins, I'd say, yeah, I'd bet that 18-1 price. But we've got a long offseason ahead, that is for sure. We'll talk about the 49ers and some other news and notes around the NFL next.
not saying every SportsGrid listener is a legend, but you might start thinking about who's going to play you in the movie. Just saying. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
15 measles cases, mostly in school-aged children, have been confirmed in a small county in West Texas with one of the highest rates of vaccine exemptions in the state.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg.
South Plains Public Health District Director Zach Holbrook said Monday that his department was first notified in late January about the first 2 cases in Gaines County, which he said were 2 children who had seen a physician in Lubbock. Some of the cases appear to be connected to private religious schools in the district. Holbrook says an investigation is ongoing. New York government employees are barred from downloading DeepSeek's artificial intelligence application onto state devices due to security concerns. Governor Kathy Hochul made the announcement Monday. The DeepSeek chatbot known as R1 responds to user queries just like its U.S.-based counterparts, such as the popular ChatGPT. But the China-based DeepSeek has code hidden in its programming that has the built-in capability to send user data directly to the Chinese government, according to experts.
I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
If you love designer brands and you love clearance, then you're going to love this. Macy's is having a huge designer clearance event right now with incredible new designer markdowns on cold weather styles from BCBG, Hugo Boss, Michael Kors, and more. How big are the markdowns? How about Coach boots for $200 or less? So if you're looking for the things you love all in one place, come in and shop the designer clearance event at Macy's today. Savings off already reduced prices. Exclusions apply.
With Progressive's Name Your Price tool, you get coverage options based on how much you want to pay for car insurance. And then you decide how to spend the rest of your money because you're in charge. And right now, you're going to pay for groceries. But you decide what groceries. Just keep in mind you're running out of dishwashing soap. But you decide if you're going to buy that soap. Just those dishes won't clean themselves, will they? Remember, with Progressive's Name Your Price tool, we'll help you find coverage at a fair price. And then you're in charge. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Not available in all states. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Ask any player and they'll tell you any advantage is important.
That's where we come in.
SportsGrid delivers gaming strategies and analysis 7 days a week.
The winning edge.
It's your advantage to more winning
more often.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
As we talk about the shifting odds already this early in an offseason for those Super Bowl 60 prices, Scott, we focus on the team that will be hosting Super Bowl 60 inside their home stadium in Santa Clara, California, the San Francisco 49ers. Perhaps the team I was most compelled by in what the odds makers would list them as this offseason. A team that has been an odds maker darling, often a favorite, with very short prices to win divisions and conferences and Lombardi trophies, but has failed in doing so, at least that Super Bowl championship in the last half decade. The Niners did see their price shortened by a couple of bucks from where it opened to where it is right now. 17-1 is now 15-1. San Francisco, 6th best price overall around the NFL, 3rd shortest of an NFC team. And Scott, it will be really interesting to see this uneasy offseason ahead for San Francisco, much like last year was in a way as well, with the Brandon Ayuk drama, so on and so forth. Super Bowl weekend, we learned that Deebo Samuel was given permission by the 49ers to seek a trade and a new home. We heard from Niners owner and CEO Jed York earlier this week as well about Brock Purdy's contract situation. He is due for a very large raise, seeing as he was the final pick of the 7th round of the entirety of the 2022 NFL Draft. The Niners have had him at quite a discount the last 3 seasons. York said this, quote, "I know we want Brock to be here for a long time, and we'll do everything we can to make that work." He said that, did Jed York, on Monday. So, Scott, the San Francisco 49ers, a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross this offseason.
They really do, Ben. I mean, it seems like every year there's always one, whether it's Ayuk or Samuel or Purdy now. But I think this team is regressing, not going forward. We've seen them fool around. I won't say screw up because they ended up with Brock Purdy, but we've seen them fool around, with this quarterback room. Whether it's Jimmy G and then drafting for Trey Lance and move it up in the draft, that turned out to be nothing. They get lucky with Brock Purdy. So there's no guarantee that they're going to sign him. If I'm Purdy's people, I'm asking for 40, 45 million, right? That's the going rate for a big-time quarterback. If I'm San Francisco, I'm thinking more along the line of, maybe 30, 35 million, Baker Mayfield type of money. And I can see there being issues. So they don't have to sign him. He does have 1 year left, but boy, you don't want that to be a lame duck situation, right? Because if he has a good year, then you got to pay your $50 million because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. So that's a tough decision to make. You got Christian McCaffrey. He's been relatively healthy until this year. This is the Christian McCaffrey that we've seen over the years. He can never stay healthy. I think that's going to be a thing next year as well. You're basically giving Deebo Samuel an open trade policy. Here, go find yourself a move. I think they're coming back to the pack. It's a weird division. There's not any great team for sure. And it may go down next year as the worst division in football, believe it or not. I mean, Arizona and Seattle, they are what they are. They never seem to be able to get more than 500. And we don't know what the Rams are doing, coming or going with Matthew Stafford. So the division is open for them, but the days of them being the overwhelming NFC favorite, I think, are long gone.
Yeah, Scott, they were a hefty favorite, that being the 49ers, near a minus $2 price to win the NFC West once again entering this year. Brock Purdy's average salary in this rookie deal, because he was Mr. Irrelevant, fewer than $1 million per year. His cap hit on the rise throughout these 4 years. The way it works in NFL contracts for rookies, if you're an opening round, first round selection, you have a 4-year deal with a 5th-year team option that they need to declare if they're going to pick up that option entering your 4th NFL season. Basically, for everybody else, it is often a 4-year deal. Thus, the final year of Brock Purdy's contract is ahead. But as Scott said, you got to be wary. You don't want to make him an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. Scott, it's not a matter to me of if Brock Purdy signs that contract extension with the 49ers this offseason. It's how much. Not even when. It's how much for Brock Purdy. Is it going to be a deal that we have seen where we have seen quarterback inflation on the rise? Dak Prescott, highest paid player in NFL history, richest ever contract signed right before 2024 got underway, $60 million per year. Is it going to be the Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love number of $55 million per year? Is it closer to that Baker Mayfield extension signed this previous offseason in Tampa for around $33 million per year? Is it a happy medium somewhere in between 45 to 50 mil? That, I think, is the question for Brock Purdy. I would guess, Scott, it's probably closer to $50 million, somewhere along that line, annual average salary. It's just what quarterbacks are making nowadays. Has he earned that right? Has he been the beneficiary of Kyle Shanahan and all the talent around him? Of course. Do you need good players to always make it work? Of course. Do I think he is simply a game manager? No. I think Brock Purdy has shown that he can play at this level. Just the questions the 49ers have to answer. Also given some elbow injury concern, of course, that he suffered and ended his season prematurely in the NFC Championship game now over 2 years ago.
I tell you, Ben, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Let's have, let's play some fun here. Don't forget who was on the team last year, right? Sam Darnold. Say Sam Darnold comes to you. Say Minnesota doesn't re-sign him, right? And Sam Darnold comes to you and says, listen, I'll take $35 million for 3 years, $100 million contract. And now you could trade Brock Purdy. And we've seen him trade quarterbacks, right? That's what I mean. We've seen them fool around with this quarterback room. So maybe they trade Brock Purdy, get something for him, bring in Sam Darnold. You had him, you work with him, you've seen him have success. You have nearly as many weapons theoretically as Minnesota does. So why can't he do with us what he did with Minnesota? And now you get Sam Darnold locked in for $35 million a year for the next 3 years, which I think is what he'll get on the open market. Those last couple of games, I think, really put a sour on his season. You might need to go to $40 million, but I don't think you're going to go 3 years guaranteed. I think you're going to get kind of like a Danny Nichols, as I like to call him, contract. Maybe 4 years, 2 years guarantee, maybe 2.5. I don't know if anyone's willing to throw 3 years guaranteed to like $40 million at Sam Darnold. I'd be surprised.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason for San Francisco. A lot of talent throughout the entirety of that roster. Robert Saleh back as the defensive coordinator. We'll see what it means for the 49ers entering 2025. I got to head out. They're using the studio for some interviews. Scott Wetzel takes you home on the other side of the break here on FFC.
is winning the lottery. Strategy is settling your divorce before cashing in the ticket. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and SiriusXM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Money Line at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. 800-797-1292. That's 800-797-1292.
Think of us as your cool roommate that has this innate gift of somehow always picking winners and never bugs you about doing the dishes or paying rent. Sports gaming strategies and information 24/7. Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
You're listening to Football Full Circle with Scott Wetzel and Ben Stevens.
All right, welcome back. It is Football Full Circle here on the grid as we close up shop here. You know, this offseason, generally the offseason is dominated by the draft talk, and I'm sure there will be obviously a lot this year, but with the limited number of quarterbacks expected to go in the first round, 2, maybe 3, right, that it really does open the door to all the free agent quarterbacks. And if this was, 5, 6, 7 years ago, man, you talk about a monster free agent draft of quarterbacks, right? But it's not. It's 2025. And a lot of these guys I'm about to mention are, quite frankly, past their prime, even if they didn't have a prime. They're past it. But it does, the San Francisco situation, as Ben and I were talking about, does open the door to a lot of things. Just because San Francisco's recent history, as we talked about, they had Jimmy G. They make the trade, in fact, for Jimmy G. They go from basically a last-place club. He brings them back to resurgence, and they leads them to a Super Bowl. And what happens the very next year? They trade up in the draft with the Miami Dolphins, and they draft Trey Lance, which turned out to be a bust. But the point is they actually made the move against the quarterback that led them to the Super Bowl the year before. So knowing they certainly have the capability of doing that again, do you really pay Brock Purdy $50 million? To me, he had his chance to shine this season. With all those weapons last year and 2 years ago, listen, there's a lot of quarterbacks that could have had success with that San Francisco team, and I think they knew that. So they get lucky. They're paying him next to nothing as the last person drafted, and they could pay all these guys. Now they got to pay the piper, whether it's going to be him or somebody else. They have to pay the piper, which is why they're allowing Debo now to go shop himself around, because they just can't pay all these guys. You could before, because you were paying your quarterback literally $2 million a year, but whether it's going to be Purdy or someone else, you're going to have to pay him a boatload of money. So let's just say they want to move on and trade Purdy and maybe get a second-round pick for him, right? And then you got to go into the free agent market. Would you bring in a Derek Carr? You could probably get him on the cheap. If you wanted to keep your quarterback salary at $30 million, $35 million or less, I think you could get Derek Carr for less than $35 million, right? He would be there. How about Danny Nichols, former Giants quarterback, as I like to call him? There are some that are still in his corner. I'm not, never was. But did he have some success with the Giants 2 years ago when he led them to the postseason? Yeah, he actually did. Give him some weapons, give him a halfway decent offensive line. Maybe, just maybe. How about Russell Wilson? Is Pittsburgh going to move on from him? He was, 1 year deal, him and Justin Fields. Steelers got to make some decisions. Would you go down that route? Sam Darnold is the most obvious one. He's probably at the top of the free agent list as far as quarterbacks are concerned. Is Minnesota going to go back after him? I don't think they will, knowing that they got J.J. McCarthy. I'd be a little surprised. Not shocked, but I'd be a little surprised. He would be the one. Can you get him for $35 million? I think you can, as I was telling Ben. I think he's in line for a 3 to 4 year contract, and it doesn't matter so much how many years it is, how much money is guaranteed. I think you could get him for 2.5 years guaranteed. Let's say let's go optimistic, $35 million, $130 million over 4 years with about half of that $60 million guaranteed. I think you could get that for him. Would you do that? Or dare I even suggest this, but seeming like here in New York, the Jets have made the decision with Aaron Rodgers. They've apparently told him that, thanks, but no thanks for next season. He's going to be a free agent. Would San Francisco cut bait with Brock Purdy and bring in the local boy, Aaron Rodgers? 1 year deal. You probably get him for 1 year, $35 million. He was set to make 37 with the Jets. You could probably get him to accept the $35 million. He has weapons, pretty good offensive line, great running back in McCaffrey. If he can come back healthy, which I'm sure he can, whether he can stay healthy, different story. But that would be intriguing, and that's the one situation if you're an Aaron Rodgers guy, like, okay, I need to find a team that wants to win now, that can realistically win now. It's got some weapons. I'm not going to the Raiders. They have nobody. I'm not going to the Saints. They don't have anybody. It's got to be a team like San Francisco. Could Aaron Rodgers basically undersell Brock Purdy and say, listen, you're going to have to give him 35, 40, 50? I'll take 20. I'll take 20. Give me 1 more year. I don't want to end my career like I had in New York. Give me 1 year, $20 million. And then you can move on from me after that if you want. Not a bad. I'm telling you right now, San Francisco is at least kicking that around. Absolutely. Good job by Ben. He'll be back tomorrow. Him and I, Ben Stevens, right here on Football Full Circle on the Grid. Have yourselves a great Tuesday, everybody.
Now you've done it. You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge for short. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.